Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year is entitled Summary of the Early Morning Shiur. Baruch Hashem. We learn together in the morning at, these days, it's 5:45, 45 minutes before the Shacharis, which Hanaitz these days is later, so we start 6:30. And after the Chagim, we're spending a few days on the Halachot of Morda Geshem, the Gemara's Morda Geshem, and on the Tain Talim Watal of Racha, some very interesting insights. The Mishnah goes ahead and Tanin on the first page, Ben Amad Aleph, talks about when we start saying Mordat Geshem, and there's a very sure one says at the beginning of the Chag. The other says, why would you talk about rain at the beginning of the Chag? It's a klala. We don't want rain on the Chag. So we passing like the sheet that says, no, you do it at the end of the Chag. And that's when we start praising Hashem. Even the first opinion says we don't ask for rain, we just praise. But the second opinion says, yeah, but it implies we want rain, and we don't even want to imply it during the season until the end of the Chag. Fine, that's how we pass it. More at Mashmach Morda Geshem, we say at the end of the Chag, like all Kilo do around Klal Yisrael, in Am Yisrael. Then the Tosfos says, and in Chutz La'aretz, they have a Sveika Diyoma, because on Shmini Atzeret there in Chutz La'aretz, it's a question, is it the last day of Sukkot or is it the first day of Shmini Atzeret? And they have to balance things out over there. They treat it this way, treat it that way. They sit on the sukkah, but they don't make a bracha on the sukkah. He says low plug, but they keep the takana going, even though we know the calendar for hundreds of years in advance. We know the calendar still, even though there's no real doubt. Maybe one day it's going to go back to the system of witnesses seeing in Yerushalayim and reporting it that way to Klal Yisrael, and maybe one day there's going to be a real 2 days again. And therefore, we continue the system of 2 days. Mentioning that, as we're going to see in a few minutes, why it's an important point. So fine, that's Bet Amud Aleph, and that's the Tosfos. The Gemara continues on Yud Amud Aleph. Says, what about asking for rain? The first opinion says, on the 3rd of Cheshvan we ask, because that's when the rain season begins in Eretz Yisrael. And the next Shita says on the 7th of Cheshvan. Why? We need to give 15 days after Sukkoth is over for everyone to travel back to the furthest places. They just came up Aliyah Regel to come to the Mikdash. And we need to give them 2 weeks to travel back to reach Nahar Prat all the way up on the northern border by Syria. So that works for Eretz Yisrael. And Chutz La'aretz, it works 60 days after the equinox. That's in Bavel. So the Rosh comes along and says 2 points. He's fascinating, but he says the equinox is a very specific astronomical time. And he quotes the Rav Yah that says it goes by the minute. Meaning, the equinox, if that year equinox falls out on 3 o'clock p.m., so 60 days later at 3 p.m. is when you start with Tain Talim Watal of Racha in Bavel. Not a minute before, which is rare. When in halacha do we ever start sitting in the middle of the day? We always go by the nighttime at the beginning of the halachic day. We rarely start something in the middle of the day, even though there are opinions that say Bar Mitzvah Bacha is 13 years from his Bar Mitzvah birth time. So we don't really hold that in either case, not by the Bar Mitzvah boy and not by the Tain Talim Matar in Bavel, but it is a fascinating opinion. But then the Rosh goes on and says, I don't understand why if Bavel it's 60 days, that after the equinox, what about other places outside of Israel? Why should it be 60 days? Because Bavel. And he says in the provincia, they actually go ahead and do it much earlier, because that's when they need rain earlier. And he says it's a good thing to do it early. The Korban Atanel says, yes, very nice, it's a good thing to do, but Lamaisa, the minhag is that in all areas of exile, we do it 60 days, and that's it. And if you do Saint Tawatat earlier, you have to go back, the Korban Atanel says. Now, moving to the Ran. The Ran says something fascinating. The Ran goes ahead and he says that what's the idea of waiting 2 weeks? It's very nice in the times of the Mikdash, but we don't have the Mikdash anymore. And therefore you're going to go ahead. You're going to go ahead because of the Mikdash and wait extra days? That's not a very good chumrah. Okay, it's not a very good chumrah, because we go ahead and we wait a few days from the beginning of the rain season. Every day is crucial. So if there's no pilgrims anymore coming back from the Mikdash, we should go ahead and say it at the ideal agricultural time, which is the 3rd of Cheshvan. And to wait for the 7th, 4 days without rain, we very much hold that our request for the rain may hopefully bring about the divine compassion, so to speak, to have the rain. So you want to ask for rain at the first moment possible. So if there's no pilgrims anymore because there's no Mikdash, so then it should be on the 3rd of Cheshvan. So the Ran says this is not simple. And he says, even why on the 7th of Cheshvan do we do it? I look at other Gemaras in Shas, to go ahead from Yerushalayim all the way up north, you can't do that in 15 days. This is a very fast pace to get there in 15 days. He says, yes, you have to rush to get back. But even when there was a Mikdash around, they wanted the people to rush. He said, we need to ask for rain, ideally on the 3rd. But we can't do it on the 3rd because we have mercy on you, Rahmanut on you, because you're traveling. So fine, we're not going to go ahead and do it on the 3rd, do it on the 7th, but it means moving. You're going to have to move the pace quicker than a leisurely pace. But we want you to get back, so by the 7th we'll wait, but once the 7th Cheshvan hits, we're going to ask for rain, and you make sure you get back in time. So the Ran continues, and he says, this is serious stuff, asking for rain. This is asking for our lives. We need the agricultural success. So it's one thing when there's a Mikdash. There's no Mikdash. This is halacha of the Mashiach. This is halacha from Mashiach's times. And therefore he says, Zayin Cheshvan is very difficult. He says, but there is a Gemara on Daled base that says that in certain locations they used to have the crops out on the field till the 7th of Cheshvan. And now it already would be a rational reason to wait, because it's not for the Mikdash, which doesn't exist, not for the pilgrims who don't exist anymore. Rather, it's why? Because in certain areas, the agricultural ideal time would be the 7th. So Ran says, okay, that makes sense. So the Ran says what you really should have is a few different times. If you don't have any crops in the field, then the 3rd of Cheshvan is the ideal. If you have crops in the field, then the 7th is better. And if you live in Chutz La'aretz and the equinox, that's the best time, 6 days after the equinox, then that's the right time. If you really have to look at each time, the only thing he says is the Rif and the Ram don't seem to hold this way. They seem to be holding by the idea of the pilgrims. So you would have thought he would say, oh, this is a fixed takana that once it was set up for the Mikdash, even though I don't know the Mikdash, this is based on the pilgrims, it has many areas in halacha. We have low, plug, the halacha is set, and that's the way it is. He doesn't say that. He says, why would we be going by the pilgrims? And he doesn't say, oh, it's a low plug, it's a fixed halacha, and we do this across the board. He does not say that. He says, it must be that even nowadays, and even after the Mikdash, there were still pilgrims going on during the 3 holidays. They were going up to the Mikdash, even though there was no Mikdash, but they go to our Bayit area. And they still had the ascent. And then they would travel back after the Chag, and they would still be traveling till the 15th. And that's why, according to the Ram of the Rif, we still wait to the 15th. So Ran is not ready to say this is the way it was set up. Mikdash, and even if there's no Mikdash and no pilgrims, it's a fixed halacha. For him, it doesn't make sense that we're going to give up so much agriculturally and wait any extra day for a takana, an enactment from 1,000 years ago that doesn't apply year to year. He just doesn't see that. So therefore he has to try to make sense of why we'd wait even nowadays for the 7th. Either it's going to be because agriculture still is good, because you leave crops in the field in certain locations, or because it's agriculturally not ideal, but practically you have people still traveling till this very day. And therefore the Ran says maybe that would be justification. But it's fascinating that he's not ready to say a low plug, there's the fixed takana, and even though we're paying a price agriculture, it doesn't matter. He's not ready to say that over here. It's Hashem, next year we'll continue from the Shulchan Aruch and down to the recent poskim on this topic. Because do we say today, let's say a person goes in, he makes a mistake, and he says, same time today, a few days after Sukkoth. So we don't have pilgrims. Agriculturally, if it's the best to do it now, so at least b'diavad, once it's done, we say, okay, you did it. You don't have to go back to say Shemon Esrei again. Yes, Hashem will continue next time.